to come and talk to you all today. I always appreciate the opportunity to do small group presentations. And if I didn't meet you at the open house a while back, my name is Jenny Brown, and I'm a registered dietitian. Just a little bit about me, my background. So I have had a few years of experience working in hospitals, but in the last year I decided to start up my own private practice called Food Med, and to really just pursue my passion of counseling nutrition in the community. So thank you. Sorry. That's all right. Has anyone, I assume several people here have seen dietitians before, familiar with the role of a dietitian. So, you have, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, just in comparison to maybe a general nutritionist, we do have to do a lot of clinical training. So we do have to, when we're counseling people, we do have to take into consideration their past medical history, medications, anything that can affect your nutritional status. So just a little bit about us as well, because we are registered with the provincial college. The fee for seeing a dietitian may be reimbursed if you do have coverage for services such as that. So just a little disclaimer here. I just wanted to say before I start that the information that I'm presenting is general information. It's not necessarily meant to be taken as individualized nutrition advice. For me to be able to provide that to you, it would require a sit down, and I would need to collect information from you to be able to make specific recommendations. So. And I also wanted to say that I do recognize there is a fair amount of knowledge in this room. So if there's anything that you would like to contribute to what I'm saying, please do so. And as well, if you do have any questions, I will have some time at the end of the hour here to have a bit of a question and answer session. As well, I do have cards up at the front here. If there's any questions you have after you go home, please feel free to email or give me a call and I can address those for you. Okay, so a little outline of the talk today. So I just wanted to start out by reviewing a quick nutrition quiz. It's just really to kind of get you thinking along the lines of the subjects that I'll be covering. No need to answer them right away, but just a little run through of just to touch on the topics I'll be talking about. And the main two subjects that I'll be touching on today will be healthy weight management and as well healthy digestion. As well as addressing some of the challenges that may surround being able to help manage your weight in a healthy way, as well as manage healthy digestion. So yeah, so to start out the quiz, if everybody's got a copy, there might be an extra one on the side there if you don't already have one. Just quickly run through them here. So how do you lose weight the healthy way? Do you avoid carbs, avoid fat, starve yourself? None of the above.
None of the above.
What does protein do for our bodies? Keeps us slim, helps build muscle, and keep skin healthy, alters your body type, or all of the above?
D.
B. B.
Yes.
You guys already know all this. Yeah. Which foods can have carbs? Milk, bread, vegetables, all of the above.
All of the above.
All of the above. What is a resting metabolic rate? The rate of your heartbeat, the amount of time it takes to recover from exercise, the number of calories you burn at rest, or your pulse at rest?
C.
What affects your bowel regularity? Dietary fiber, food intake and physical activity, the nerves controlling the digestive tract, your posture, all of the above. All of the above? Yeah. Frozen fruits and vegetables are less nutritious than fresh fruits and vegetables. True or false? True? Yeah, so you're right. You can prepare healthy dinner meals without actually cooking. True or false?
True.
Canned foods should be avoided. True or false?
True or false?
It's actually false.
Oh, it's false?
Yeah.
Really?
Okay, so just kind of touching on some of the things I'll be talking about there. So just getting on to the first subject area of healthy weight management. So there's a couple handouts back there to grab some here. So before I get into the subject area, I just wanted to define a couple terms And I apologize if this seems really elementary. I don't mean to insult anybody's intelligence here, but I have been asked to define these terms in the past, so just wanted to make sure everything is clear for everybody in the room. So calories. So what is a calorie?
Yummy.
I've been asked this, I've been asked this before. Kind of stumped me. So there is a nutritional definition as well as the engineer's definition, but I'll be obviously providing the nutritional definition. So a calorie is basically just the standard unit of energy for measuring the energy that we consume through food. So food contains energy as calories. As you can measure length in meters, centimeters, meters, we measure the amount of energy in food, giving it a unit called a calorie. So calories and metabolic rate is the second term I'd like to define. So the metabolic rate is the rate at which our bodies will burn or use those calories to supply the body with energy. So there are trillions of cells in our body that are working constantly around the clock every second of every day to keep us alive. That's what we call the resting metabolic rate. And we want to make sure that we are feeding our resting metabolic rate adequately to be able to keep all of our systems working. So the resting metabolic rate, the rate at which we burn calories simply at rest or if we remain motionless throughout the entire day. But we don't tend to remain motionless throughout the entire day, so we do need additional energy to supply all of the activities that we do, such as our daily routines, or additional activities such as exercise. So for weight management as adults, because we are fully grown, we do not any longer need energy for growth. We simply need it for supplying our resting metabolic rate, or kind of the engines that are always burning, as well as fueling activities for daily routines as well as exercise. So when you look at it from that perspective, we can really boil down weight management for adults in quite a simple way. We're looking at energy or calories in versus calories burned. And if you were to picture me as like one of those old-fashioned scales where you put more weight on either side, if I'm an adult that requires 2,000 calories a day for healthy weight management, 2,000 calories in, 2,000 calories burned. Very simply, if you were to consume more calories than you need, so you're kind of getting a tipping of the scales, more calories in, fewer calories burned, we're obviously going to get a situation where we're putting on extra weight that we don't need. If we're alternatively more calories burned than taken in, we are in a negative energy balance situation where we would be losing weight and we would potentially be underweight, which is also not healthy. So how do we return to this state of being at our healthy weight and maintaining that weight, keeping this nice and balanced? It sounds so simple, but why can it be a struggle for us in modern day life to maintain this balance of in versus out? Well, there's quite a few factors that are working against us all the time. And there's a reason why diet fads, nutrition supplements, all these sorts of things, that's why there's a multi-billion-dollar industry surrounding all of that, because they know that there is a market for it. So there are several physiological reasons why, or factors that can contribute towards either weight gain or weight loss, as well as environmental factors that can contribute towards us deviating from a healthy body weight. So some of the physiological factors, I'll just kind of brainstorm with the group here. We all want to kind of contribute towards thinking of factors that could lead to a deviation from our healthy body weight. If we were to look at a category of being overweight or underweight. So this one is a little bit trickier than the environmental factors, so I'll just kind of get the ball rolling here. But one of the ones that I typically see in my client population who tend to struggle with being overweight is that they will skip meals. So they'll either totally skip a meal or they will have an extended period of time between meals. So the reason skipping meals and having extended fast between meals can be a problem. Sorry, if everybody can see. On a physiological level, what's happening there is when we deprive our body of calories, our resting metabolic rate will actually start to go down. So that will cause us to burn fewer calories and have extra energy around for fat storage, as well as with an extended fast period between meals. So if you're kind of getting to the 4 or 5 hour mark of having had your last meal, that would actually cause a situation where your blood sugars have dropped. After we eat a meal, normally our blood sugars will rise, insulin will allow our bodies to use that energy and will drop below a healthy blood sugar.
So how often would you say you see like negative results or positive results between, like, say, okay, I did it for a week, or as opposed to doing it like once a week where I didn't eat my meals properly or something? Like how long will you see a negative or a positive result?
So if you were to, you're asking if you were to skip a meal once a week kind of thing.
Yeah, like what is the gauge as far as?
Yeah, it would be more like what you would do typically. So like 5 days out of a week would have more of an impact on your health than say like one day you don't eat breakfast or one day you have an extended fast. It would have to take place over a consistent period of time.
So what's the average time that you want to wait for your meals?
I will kind of get onto that, but so typically we would want to be eating, every sort of 3 to 4 hours would be ideal for the average person. So skipping meals, decreasing our metabolic rate, as well as extended fasting periods causing the low blood sugar event. And what typically happens if you don't have ready, available, healthy food around you once you get into that low blood sugar phase, you get into a bit of a survival mode and you just want food now. So what tends to happen is you will grab at convenience foods. Convenience foods tend to be lower nutrition, higher calorie, and can almost result sometimes in a bit of a binge episode where you kind of overeat. You eat more calories than you would have normally if you hadn't let yourself get to that low blood sugar situation. Another one that might seem pretty obvious is inactivity. So you might think, of course, inactivity, you're not burning as many calories, but what happens in our bodies when we aren't moving around enough is our body becomes less sensitive to the hormone insulin. So insulin, as you probably all know, is the hormone that allows all of our body cells to draw energy in to be able to use them to do work. But another thing that insulin does is it also promotes fat storage in the body. And when we are less active, our body becomes less sensitive to this hormone and will react, again going into survival mode, by producing more insulin. So our bodies will produce more of a fat storing hormone when we are less active, promoting weight gain. Another thing is damage to the nervous system. So all of our muscle groups are innervated by our nervous system. When we have damage to the nervous system and those nerves are no longer able to trigger the muscles to do the contraction that they normally do, because muscle is a highly metabolic tissue, that will contribute to decreasing our resting metabolic rate. So as well as decreasing the number of muscle contractions, it also will cause damage to the nervous system, will also cause a decrease in muscle mass overall. So it's kind of hitting us on two angles there. Not only is the muscle not contracting as it would have previously prior to the damage, but we are also losing muscle mass over time, and that we are basically losing our metabolic tissue over time as well. Another one that is a really common problem in modern day life is simply stress. Stress, chronic stress, and lack of sleep. So both of these things, again, extremely common these days, will trigger the release of a stress hormone called cortisol. So cortisol we originally evolved to use cortisol in a stress situation to provide us with energy to either fight or run away from a stressor. But what happens in modern day life, we're dealing with stressors, we're not really in a fight or flight situation, so our bodies are releasing this hormone cortisol, but this excess energy that our body is giving us is a survival mechanism. We cannot expend this energy. So it's simply stress and chronic stress and lack of sleep will promote more fat storage in addition to what we already have. So another big problem for overweight situations. Another one that I just wanted to throw in here, because I have had several clients talk to me about caloric restrictions, fasting, very low calorie diets. You can probably guess after I had talked about the skipping meals that following very low calorie diets will cause your resting metabolic rate to go down, promoting fat storage. And what happens when people do follow those diets for a period of time, lose dramatic amounts of weight, almost 100% of the time they will fall back into normal patterns, but not only will they regain to what they were previously, but often they regain to a higher weight because they have decreased their resting metabolic rate. So I really do not recommend some of the trendier low-calorie diets that are flying around right now. Okay, so physiological factors contributing to an underweight situation. So what I've seen, and I would certainly appreciate any additional comments here if anybody has any. I've seen when people are kind of dealing with a new health condition and they're suddenly on a new type of medication, that this may cause lack of appetite, disruption to normal digestion, causing just generally consuming fewer calories and becoming in an underweight and unhealthy situation.
Can medication go both ways though?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, it can go both ways. Yeah, medications, poor digestion for people, for example, dealing with chronic constipation. This is one that I've seen in the hospital quite a bit as contributing to decreased intake. This was more so in the geriatric population, but the chronic constipation was a significant factor in decreasing intake in the elderly population in hospital situations. So, and then another one, psychiatric conditions such as depression, anxiety. There's a lot of neurochemistry involved in the communication between the gut and the brain. And when we do have a situation where brain chemistry isn't quite as healthy as it should be, we start to see problems in this communication with the brain and the gut. And as a result of that, can see lowered appetite, lowered intake, and weight loss. Yeah, so if anybody has any other ideas, any other factors they can think of that can contribute towards deviation from healthy body weight. This one is a little more tricky, but the next section here might be a little bit easier to think of some ideas. So, so the other types of factors that can contribute towards deviation from weight are environmental factors. So environmental factors contributing towards weight gain. So one of the first ones that I can think of would be lack of access to healthy food.
Oh, you mean poverty.
Yeah. I mean, there's many reasons why we might have a lack of access to healthy food. But yeah, I mean, it could result in, just as I was talking before about convenience foods. Kind of results, if we can't, it's difficult getting to the grocery store, it's difficult preparing the food. When we fall back on the convenience foods, again, lower nutrition, higher calories, resulting in additional weight gain. What about things like extra large portions? We see that a lot in North America, very big problem, and one of the biggest environmental factors contributing towards weight gain. If you go to a restaurant, you've got massive plates. You go to the movies, massive popcorn, drinks. You go to the gas station, and chocolate bars are like this big. So we've really gone out of control in North America with portion size. So extra large portions are definitely a contributing factor. Another thing is heavy marketing, and this kind of ties into convenience food side of things. A lot of marketing out there. Food marketing is billions of dollars spent on trying to push products in your face constantly. When you drive down any road, you'll see a fast food place, billboard signs, advertising, magazines, internet, television, radio, constantly being bombarded with marketing for foods that tend to be more the convenience foods, lower nutrition, higher calories. So again, another factor in our environment contributing towards poor health. What about underweight? I would probably say this could also apply in the underweight category. So access to food again. In that situation, perhaps that individual is not falling back on convenience foods, just simply not eating enough. So poor access to food can also contribute towards weight loss. Another one that I thought of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're dealing with mobility issues, just trying to get from A to B can be a struggle. So sometimes we might end up expending more energy just trying to get around than actually being able to consume enough calories to make up for that. So
Access to food, now they have, was it click and collect and delivered right to your door, so there's a lot more access, I guess, in that way too.
Oh,
With
yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
delivering food, so
Yeah,
there's
no,
like
there's-
a little bit more of
Definitely.
help there, which is awesome.
yeah, no, that's a great contribution. Definitely, we're getting a lot better with having convenient access to food, healthy food. Okay. So now that we've kind of been able to see that there's a lot of physiological and environmental factors contributing towards us deviating away from a healthy weight, what can we do to try to, what are some simple things we can do anyway to try to make sure that we're staying within a healthy weight range?
Go to a session where somebody tells you all the things you should do. That's why I'm here.
So based on some of the things I talked about, maybe write that one down next time.
Motivational talk, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that we can do is try to eat regularly, as we had highlighted earlier on. If we're skipping meals, having extended fast between meals, eating every, if we want to get around every 3 to 4 hours, I mean, that is just a general recommendation that tends to supply our bodies with enough calories to keep our resting metabolic rate at its highest, and as well to keep our blood sugars as stable as they can, so we're not dipping down too low. So for some people that could just be, if you're the type of person that can handle 3 meals a day, that could be 3 meals plus 2 to 3 snacks a day. If that's not kind of your style, if your lifestyle is quite busy, trying to get in 6 small meals a day would be the alternative recommendation there. The other thing that we can do is keep those meals and snacks as balanced as we can. Everybody familiar with the term balanced when I talk about balanced? So we're trying to make sure there's a source of protein, carbs, fat, and fiber. So keeping all of those nutritional elements in as many meals and snacks as we can will help to contribute towards preventing excessive hunger, so preventing those binge episodes, preventing blood sugar drops, in particular protein, fat, and fiber will help in keeping your blood sugar stable. And then just generally the nutrition provided by all of those elements. Protein is going to help keep your muscles strong. It's going to help keep your skin healthy, prevent skin breakdown. Carbs, again, will supply the energy to your resting metabolic rate to keep it revved up at its highest, prevent fatigue after exercise. The protein in particular, if you're wanting muscle growth, if we try to consume that within 30 to 60 minutes after a period of exercise, that will help those muscles to draw that protein in. The recommendation is at least 20 grams of protein per snack and a maximum of 40 grams of protein per meal. The fat will contribute towards helping us feel full, helps us to absorb several vitamins, important for that, as well as helping to maintain healthy skin. Again, helping to prevent skin breakdown, pressure ulcers, things like that. And then the fiber, on top of contributing towards helping us feel full, will obviously kind of help our digestive system work at its healthiest. So yeah, that's what balanced means. And then the third one, and this one is actually this one I could spend an entire workshop on, because I talked about how portion control has gone so out of control, crazy. This element, or this key element, is one of the main reasons why a lot of weight loss programs out there are actually based on just simply portion control. So, but yeah, trying to keep all of these elements together in how we eat will really help to contribute towards maintaining health and maintaining healthy body weight. Are there any questions there? Is there anything that, I guess as far as protein foods, we're all quite familiar with where we get our protein. There's obviously the meat, poultry, fish, also a lot of dairy products, milk, cheese, yogurt, in particular Greek yogurt, fantastic source of protein, as well as meat alternatives, beans, peas, lentils, tofu, eggs, peanut butter, all of that. Carbohydrates are kind of across the board, except for maybe in the meat. So we find them in grains, fruits, vegetables, all the obvious, rice, pasta, potatoes, all of that. Fats, we find some of the best sources of the healthy fats, the omega-3 fats, we find in the fatty fish, so salmon and trout. Nuts and seeds, in particular walnuts, are excellent source of omega-3. Those really help to maintain a healthy nervous system, as well as to help fight inflammation in the body. So I always recommend to people to get their fish twice a week. So the fatty fish is actually the best, the salmon, trout, mackerel, things like that. And then fiber, we all know, fruits and vegetables, whole grains. So yeah, any questions on that? Okay, so I also wanted to talk about healthy digestion. So I'll just kind of run through a start to finish of how the digestive system basically works, and then talk about what happens when we deviate from that healthy digestion and some of the things that we can do. So we're all probably familiar with the start of the digestive tract. We all quite enjoy that part, it's the eating part. So as we're eating food, our teeth are mechanically breaking everything down. The saliva works to start digesting carbohydrates directly in our mouths. Saliva also helps to lubricate food so that we can swallow it nice and easily. The taste buds are all sending really positive chemical messages to the brain saying, oh, this is great, keep doing this. So once we swallow, we have a reflex that helps us swallow. And from there, food will enter the esophagus, which is simply the tube connecting the mouth with the stomach, which is about right here. As the food is moving down, we've got muscular contractions, helping that food to move down into our stomach reservoir. Stomach is also doing muscular contractions, mixing everything up with digestive juices, acids, basically turning our food into kind of more of a liquid consistency. And then there's a little muscle at the bottom of our stomach that helps regulate the movement of that food into our small intestine. So this is where a lot more digestive enzymes are working, a lot more absorption of nutrients is happening in the small intestine. So food is moving through the small intestine, again, muscular contractions moving all along, and then empties into the large intestine, which again, muscular contractions are happening there. And basically the large intestine, all we're really getting out of that is extra fluid, so we're trying to absorb as much water as we can from our food, and then evacuation. So in a healthy situation, that's basically what's happening. So what happens when we kind of deviate from that and, for example, things start to slow down and things start to stagnate, things aren't moving quite as well as they should. So we can see this in the general population, not uncommon at all. But in cases, if we've had damage to our nervous system, we can get a syndrome called neurogenic bowel syndrome, which you are probably all quite familiar with. Basically, there's a dysfunction in the muscles that would normally be pushing and moving everything along, so things kind of slow down and stagnate. So, can you think of some of the factors, the nutritional factors that we can do to help manage constipation, if that's something we're dealing with?
Increase fluids.
Yeah. So, manage constipation. Absolutely. So, making sure that we're drinking enough water. So, as you can imagine, if the food moving through our digestive system is nice and lubricated with water, it will obviously be able to move through with a bit more ease. So the general recommendation for trying to make sure we're adequately hydrated is to try to get 1.5 liters a day of fluid. And it sounds pretty simple to try to stay hydrated, but you'd be surprised how often we can get dehydrated, in particular when the weather gets warm. Yeah.
When you say fluid, do you mean water or like
pop beer.
Yeah.
Beer, no.
So fluid, yeah, like that sum of 1.5, the general recommendation of 1.5, that can include things like coffee, tea, water, juice. I mean, when you're having alcohol, it tends to dehydrate you a bit, so not as much in that category, but yeah.
That's good.
What kind of water? Yeah, just distilled water or the other water?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other side of the coin there, with water, we also want to have fiber, adequate fiber, which is kind of knows, as I touched on earlier, fiber is important for helping things move through the digestive system. And you've got a handout there that highlights the two different types of fiber. There's insoluble fiber and soluble fiber. So the insoluble fiber we often know as kind of the roughage fiber, this really kind of scratchy kind of looking fiber. If you're ever to look at a piece of all-bran cereal, how it looks kind of jagged and rough, that's kind of a visual representation of what insoluble fiber looks like. Yeah, it's pretty good for helping to keep everything moving in our digestive system. It's found in things like the skins of fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, the bran on like in the all-bran cereal, or the bran on wheat, oats. So that's the first type. The second type is the type that I would highly recommend for, I recommend it constantly to the general population. The soluble fiber is it's kind of like the softer type of fiber. When it enters our digestive system, it mixes with fluids and forms like a gel type of consistency that really helps things to move through our digestive system nice and softly. Soluble fiber, the general recommendation, I do think it says about 10 grams a day, but I would recommend, especially if you're dealing with neurogenic bowel syndrome, that about 15 grams a day of soluble fiber would be ideal. And that handout that I've provided does provide you with sources, portion sizes, and the number of grams of soluble fiber in that food. So on top of helping manage constipation, soluble fiber also helps to prevent heart disease. It can help to, I was involved in a study at the university involved in looking at the cholesterol lowering abilities of soluble fiber, in particular from beans, peas, and lentils, because they're such a great source of that. It also helps to manage our blood sugars. So if you're dealing with any blood sugar abnormalities, it can help to regulate that. And has also some theories that it can help to prevent colon cancer, because it helps to, it plays a role in sort of helping to keep everything cleaned out in our system. So I recommend everybody have good sources of soluble fiber every day. Yeah.
Would you recommend like Metamucil or like actual fiber from food?
Yeah, so provide you with the soluble fiber, but if you're eating it from more of a food source, you're getting the vitamins and minerals along with that soluble fiber.
Okay.
So if you do have limited access to fruit, then absolutely the Metamucil would be a good way of getting that. I believe the average dose, 2 tablespoons, will provide about 5 grams of soluble fiber. So if you were to have that, you'd have to have it 3 times a day, which might be a little excessive to get that 15 grams. But yeah, whenever you're introducing more fiber foods in your diet, I would say do it very gradually, because the body can kind of react in almost like a shock-like way, where we might get the opposite problem, where we're getting more like diarrhea if we try to introduce fiber too quickly. Yeah, was there another question?
Basically the same
Same.
thing.
Oh, okay.
Water, fiber that you can buy.
Yeah.
Carbon and Metamucil.
Yeah. And then the third thing is physical activity. So if you can imagine, based on how I talked about how everything's kind of moving through, if you're in a situation where you're kind of kinked, you're kinking the whole system, so your posture is basically not upright. If you're engaging in activities, in particular the activities you might be doing, like the exercises that you might be doing at this facility, anything that's sort of helping to move the core a bit, kind of trying to unkink the system, allow the muscles, the musculature that is functioning to be able to move things through adequately. Those are kind of the three elements, hydration, fiber, in particular soluble fiber, and then physical activity as much as you can. Yeah, and I also wanted to say, in particular with anybody dealing with neurogenic bowel syndrome, there might be additional requirements there to help maintain sort of an adequate or healthy bowel routine. Could be things like suppositories or stool softeners. In particular, the polyethylene glycol suppositories do tend to provide better results. Yeah, any bowel routine that you might have been recommended from any clinic facility that you've been discharged from, that might be something you might have to continue with for a little while to help keep things moving, essentially. Does anybody have any questions about that?
What would you recommend as an alternative to Senecot as you're moving forward? Like if somebody's taking Senecot as part of their bowel routine,
Yeah.
is there a suggestion moving forward that would take them off the Senecot but give them a normal routine? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
PEG is the polyethylene glycol.
okay.
Yeah. So that is the one that I had read was in sort of the latest research as being the most effective. PEG, you're familiar with that?
I've heard of that, never used it.
Yeah, it's been used quite often in the hospital.
Ingestion or?
The ones that I had read about was the suppository. Yeah.
And you were talking about the dirt pills, right?
Yeah, the drug pills, yeah. Yeah, it's always like the drug pills, yeah, the drug pills.
Is Senecot actual, a vegetable extract? Isn't that what Senecot is?
Yeah.
It's not a medication, it's.
Yeah, no, it's
Well,
derived
fun.
more from a natural
Yeah, so it's
source.
probably the most natural thing.
Yeah.
I don't really think it can hurt you
Okay,
at all.
good.
Yeah.
I just wanna find out.
Yeah, no, it was, the study I read was comparing actually the vegetable base versus the polyethylene glycol. The PEG basically was producing better outcomes, so. Okay, so kind of after talking about all of this, all these nutritional recommendations, I do want to address the fact that I do know that there are challenges, there are barriers in place, in particular accessibility and affordability. So yeah, I do have information on co-ops, things like collective kitchens, meal preparation and delivery services. If that's something that you're wanting to get more information on, there is more than Meals on Wheels essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So I did want to just touch on that. So kind of looking back at that, I think everybody was pretty good with that quiz, so I don't think we need to go over that again. But yeah, I also wanted to say if you are interested in meeting with me for individualized nutrition services, I have spoken with Bean and Nancy, and we'll be able to provide you with more of a discount on an assessment and intervention. As well, I do have a special device here. It's an indirect calorimeter, and basically what it does is helps to give the most accurate estimation of your resting metabolic rate. So if you are dealing with weight management issues, having knowledge of your resting metabolic rate can be really, really beneficial for giving you an idea of how many calories you need to keep yourself in that nice balanced situation. So I am able to give you a discount on this service as well if you're interested. If there's any questions, I can certainly address those at this time. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on food tracking apps and tracking your food?
Food tracking apps, yeah, like there's one that I use quite a bit with my sports nutrition clients, it's MyFitnessPal. So that one seems to be really quite user-friendly. Everybody likes that one, so I just figured, if there's something that you want to track your diet on, that would be one that you could try using. It sort of seems like everybody knows that one, so. Has anybody encountered any challenges with that? Because I haven't had anybody have problems with it so far. Okay. And I mean, sometimes people just like writing down what they're eating, and I do have clients who just kind of journal their food as well, journaling food along with journaling their emotions at the time, because it is important to also address the emotional side of food, psychological side of things. Sometimes we can help to identify triggers for certain people if they find that they do have problems with emotional eating. So really, journaling is a great way for identifying and trying to help in that area.
I have a question about blood pressure.
Yeah.
In the morning, I wake up and I have low blood pressure, really low.
Okay.
And it wasn't really a problem until I started going back to work. And then, other than meds, and coffee, is there a good way to get my blood pressure up fairly quickly?
Yeah. I would try keeping maybe a glass of water on your bedside table. It could be that you're maybe a little bit dehydrated in the mornings. Do you?
Oh,
do
I'm
you
talking
prefer-
about really low. I'm talking 60 over 40.
Okay.
You know.
And sorry, you said that medications had been
Well,
stable?
I can do that, but I prefer not to if I can.
Oh, okay.
That's what I do if I'm in a real hurry.
Yeah.
So I'd like to reserve it for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there could be other sort of medical recommendations there, which I probably wouldn't be able to advise you on. But if you were to try to keep maybe even like a sports drink, it could be that you maybe just need extra electrolytes, extra fluid.
Okay.
From a nutritional standpoint, that's what I'd be able to say.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Is there a difference between, back to the fiber, between Benefiber and Metamucil?
I believe they're both psyllium fiber, but I maybe just have to double check on the Benefiber one. It should say on the side what type of fiber. If it says psyllium, which is it's actually spelled P-S-Y,
Right.
yeah, L-L-I-U-M. Yeah, it will say the actual fiber content there, but
Google that.
Right.
yeah, it's very likely that it's also a soluble fiber that works in a similar way. If you notice when you mix the Metamucil or most likely Benefiber, if you let it sit there, it kind of becomes like a gel.
Benefiber does not.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
It might be a slightly different form then. Any other questions?
I guess it's kind of more of like a specific question per person, but like, can you touch on the foods that would irritate, like bowel and bladder? Like, I know
yeah.
it's more individualized for each
Yeah.
person, but
Yeah, I guess some common irritants. There are some of the more processed foods. We're finding that there's problems with tolerance of some of these like nut milks. If you see like the almond,
Oh, yeah.
cashew, they do have an additive called carrageenan, and they're finding that that's actually causing a lot of almost like IBS like reactions. So yeah, things like sugar alcohols cause a lot of problems with bloating, possibly diarrhea in some people. Sugar alcohols because they don't absorb it's not like a sugar that our body would normally use. It can kind of collect in the digestive tract and almost cause like an osmotic reaction where it becomes like a very high concentration fluid in the digestive system and can cause like this massive flush of almost like a lactose intolerance reaction basically. So things like xylitol, maltitol, if you see that in, I don't recommend artificial sweeteners in general because they tend to cause weird reactions and there is a lot of studies going on right now suggesting there might be, people might actually be overeating with sweeteners versus, keeping basically a lower intake with actual real sugars. So, yeah, maltitol, you see it in things like sugar-free gum. That's where you'll often find it. But
would it
also,
be like erythritol too?
yes.
Because they use that in a lot of protein bars.
Yeah. If you're finding, you are having reactions to, God, there's so many, when you look at some of these processed foods, the ingredient list is like a novel.
Mm-hmm.
Half of them you can't even pronounce. It's very likely that there could be some of the ingredients in those foods triggering kind of digestive upsets. So, as a dietitian, I'm like whole foods as much as possible because, when you're eating an egg, it's just an egg. There's no stuff added to it. When you're having, peanut butter and crackers, like as a, higher protein, high fat snack, it's pretty much just peanut butter, especially if you're just getting the natural peanut butter. trying to keep our diet as whole foods as possible will help to cut back on any triggers that we might be getting from some of these more processed foods. But yeah, it's really kind of a trial and error and see what works well for you. Yeah, anything else?
No questions, anybody? On camera? You're gonna be on our YouTube channel.
What about stevia? Like, there's controversy between the stevia because it's natural, but the way it's processed isn't natural, so.
Yeah.
What's your thought on stevia?
So yeah, like with some of these newer products coming out, I find when there's not as many studies done on them, it is really quite hard to make an educated, provide an educated opinion on it. Again, it's kind of like, I just kind of always revert back to try to stick with as many natural foods as possible. Excuse me, if you do have problems with, if you're dealing with blood sugar abnormalities and you find that stevia agrees with you, I would sort of keep it to, you know, if you're drinking it from like a drink that's in a bottle or a can, try to just keep it to that one, because I don't think we have, I'm not sure if we have guidelines in place yet for stevia, but all the other sweeteners we do have kind of a cap on, try to only have this many milligrams. And some of them, to me, it worries me because if it says you can't eat this during pregnancy, should anybody be eating it? So.
Fair enough.
So yeah, it's the reason I do try to recommend trying to keep away from artificial sweeteners as much as possible.
Okay. If somebody were to sign up with you as a client, what would that look like? How many appointments would there be? Basically, what would that look like?
So usually what I like to get in advance of an initial assessment, so the initial assessment is our first meeting, it can be up to an hour and a half in length of time, just because I am collecting a lot of information from you. It is helpful for me to kind of know in advance that you're wanting this assessment, because part of the information I like to collect is a food journal. So it's nice to have, not necessary, but it is really nice. It usually helps me to provide a more specific intervention. If you were to collect your food, your diet basically for 3 days prior to our initial meeting, that can be useful. So if I can at least have like a week in advance notice of you wanting an assessment, that would be kind of good timing. And then depending on what you're wanting, if you're just wanting more like general nutrition, usually just the assessment is necessary. I can provide you with basically like a meal plan, a very basic meal plan from that. Maybe a set of nutrition goals that we can work on together, or come up with together, and you can work on. If you're wanting more like weight management, then I would recommend more of like an assessment with at least 3 follow-ups, because kind of trying to pinpoint some of those factors affecting you in your life can take some time to work on. It usually helps to have the social support to kind of see you for at least 3 follow-ups for that type of service, if that's what you're wanting.
I heard someone say that your blood type has bearing on like what foods. Some people say that like carbs give you energy. I know that carbs give you energy, but your blood type has a bearing on like what foods are better or beneficial for you, or foods like, do you look into that as well? Or? Yeah,
that is something that as an intern, one of my fellow students presented on this, and it was it's an interesting theory, but again, just kind of still in the theory phase. There isn't really a lot of evidence, scientific evidence anyway, to back that kind of claim up. So, I don't know. Have you followed Eat Right for Your Blood Type?
No, I've heard about it, but I haven't looked into it much. I just
not a lot of evidence to support it. So. Any more questions?
So how many calories should a normal person consume daily?
So
men versus women.
And it's unbelievably unique to each person. But when we're looking at nutrition labels on packaged foods, the percentage, when it says, you know, this provides you with certain percent of this nutrient, that's based on a 2,000 calorie a day diet. A sort of average, for an average healthy male, could be around sort of the 2,000 to 2,200, sort of in that range. If he's a little bit smaller, maybe more like 1,800 calories a day. Women tend to be lower, more like 16, 14, that kind of range. But I've seen some pretty interesting results from this testing method. I've seen a smallish woman was in the low 2,000s, and I've seen men that were like 1,500. So it can be quite variable. And if we're looking at individuals who are in wheelchairs and have had damage to the nervous system, again affecting the resting metabolic rate because of lost innervation to muscle groups. We don't actually have predictive equations currently to estimate requirements for that particular population. So the greatest recommendation for testing for that is with an indirect calorimeter, and those are the current recommendations anyway. Yeah.
Where are you located? And so if we decided to work with you, where would you be?
I do have a home office just on the south side, but generally the relationships that I have with fitness facilities, I can see clients out of those facilities. So
Like here.
if that's an option, yeah. I also visit clients' homes, so I have a vehicle.
Mhm.
Yeah. If there aren't any more questions, I do have an evaluation form. If you wouldn't mind taking a few moments to just fill that out, I'd really appreciate the feedback. There's also a space for if there's any topics that you would like to see future presentations on.
Smile.